A family in Ohio spent $400,000 on their dream home, and within 18 months, water was pouring through their kitchen ceiling during a routine spring storm. The roof looked brand new. It passed inspection. Nobody could explain it, until an inspector climbed into the attic and found the real story hiding just beneath the shingles. If you're the kind of person who wants to know what's really happening above your head before it costs you thousands, subscribe now, because every week we dig into the hidden construction mistakes that quietly destroy American homes, long before anyone notices the damage. Most people think a roof is simple. Shingles on top, nails holding them down, done. But a roof is actually one of the most complicated systems in an entire house, built from dozens of layers working together. And if just one of those layers fails, everything above it becomes a slow-motion disaster. The strange part is that a roof can look absolutely perfect from the street, from a drone photo, even from a buyer's walkthrough, while quietly falling apart underneath. That Ohio family's roof looked flawless. The shingles were straight. The color matched the trim. A real estate photographer had used it in the listing photos because it looked so clean against the blue sky. But underneath those shingles was a mistake that roofing crews make more often than most homeowners would ever guess, and it's one of the biggest reasons roofs fail years before they should. The mistake is called nailing shingles too high or too low. It sounds almost too simple to matter, but here's why it destroys roofs from the inside. Every shingle is manufactured with a nailing strip, a precise zone marked by the manufacturer where each nail is supposed to go. That zone isn't random. It's engineered so the nail catches both the shingle being installed and the one beneath it, locking them together like a zipper. When a roofer rushes, works too fast, or simply doesn't know better, those nails drift just an inch or two out of place. And that one small difference changes everything. At first, nothing seems wrong. The roof looks tight. It sheds rain during light storms. Homeowners walk past it every day with no idea anything is different from a properly installed roof. But here's where everything changed for that Ohio home. Nails placed too high missed the layer underneath completely, leaving shingles secured by nothing but a thin strip of sealant and gravity. During high winds, that's when the real story begins. Wind doesn't hit a roof evenly. It curls upward at the edges, sneaks under loose shingle tabs, and pries at every weak point it can find. A properly nailed shingle resists that uplift because the nail is anchored through two layers of material. A shingle nailed incorrectly has almost nothing holding it down except its own weight. So when strong gusts rolled through that Ohio neighborhood, the shingles didn't tear off dramatically. They lifted almost invisibly, just enough to break the seal, then settled back down looking untouched. This is the part most homeowners never notice. A shingle can lift, crack its seal, and fall back into place so perfectly that from the ground, everything looks completely normal. No missing shingles, no obvious damage, just a rooftop quietly losing its ability to keep water out, one wind cycle at a time. Underneath, moisture began creeping through those broken seals during every rainstorm. It didn't pour in, it seeped, slowly, following the path of least resistance across the plywood roof deck, working its way toward the attic insulation. And this is where the second hidden problem revealed itself, one that almost nobody catches until it's already expensive. Modern roofs rely on a layer most people have never heard of, called underlayment, a waterproof barrier installed directly on the wood deck before the shingles ever go on. Think of it as a roof's last line of defense, the safety net that catches any water sneaking past the shingles above. In a properly built roof, even a damaged shingle rarely causes serious problems because the underlayment stops the water before it reaches the wood. But in cheaper or rushed installations, contractors sometimes use thin, low-grade underlayment, Or worse, they staple it down with gaps and overlaps that don't meet manufacturer standards. It looks fine once shingles cover it. Nobody inspects it after installation because nobody can see it anymore. This is the part that costs homeowners the most money, because a weak underlayment turns a small shingle problem into a major structural one. In the Ohio house, the underlayment had tiny gaps at the seams, invisible during installation, invisible during final walkthrough, invisible even to a home inspector doing a standard visual check from the attic. Water that snuck past the compromised shingles found those gaps and slipped straight through to the wood decking underneath. Wood roof decking is essentially large sheets of plywood, and plywood has one enemy above all others: consistent moisture. A little water once in a while dries out and causes no real harm. But repeated exposure, storm after storm, month after month, slowly softens the wood fibers from the inside. This is where the danger becomes invisible in a different way, because from inside the attic, everything can still look completely normal for a surprisingly long time. That's exactly what happened here. For over a year, the attic looked untouched. No stains, no sagging, no smell. The homeowners had no reason to suspect anything, because the damage was happening in a hidden pocket between the underlayment and the plywood, an area nobody checks unless they're specifically looking for trouble. Then came the spring storm that changed everything. Heavy rain, sustained for nearly 6 hours, pushed more water through the weakened seams than the roof had ever handled before. By that point, the plywood beneath had already softened enough that it could no longer hold its shape under pressure. Water didn't just seep through anymore. It found a direct path, dripping steadily onto the attic insulation, then soaking through the ceiling drywall below. The family woke up to a brown stain spreading across their kitchen ceiling, growing larger by the hour. What looked like a sudden disaster was actually the final chapter of a story that began over a year earlier, the moment those first shingles were nailed just slightly out of place. This is where most roofing investigations get interesting, because the visible damage is never the real story. The real story is always what happened months or years before anyone noticed a problem. And in this case, there was one more hidden mistake waiting to be discovered, something almost nobody thinks to check when a roof is being replaced. When the inspector finally pulled back sections of the damaged roof, he noticed something that immediately told him this wasn't just bad luck. The original roofers had installed the new shingles directly over the old roofing layer, instead of tearing it off completely. This practice, sometimes called a roof over, is legal in many places and can save homeowners money up front. But it comes with a serious trade-off that most people are never told about. When a new roof goes over an old one, it traps whatever problems existed in that original layer. Any hidden soft spots, any old water damage, any warped sections of decking, all of it gets sealed beneath a brand new surface that looks perfect but sits on a compromised foundation. It's the equivalent of painting over rust instead of removing it first. The surface looks fixed. The problem underneath keeps spreading. In this house, the original roof had small areas of decking that were already slightly weakened from years earlier, long before the current homeowners even purchased the property. When new shingles were installed on top without inspecting or replacing that decking, those weak spots became a ticking clock. Combined with the incorrectly nailed shingles and the flawed underlayment, the roof had 3 separate hidden problems stacked on top of each other, each one making the others worse. This is why professional roofing contractors always recommend a full tear-off whenever possible, especially on a roof more than 15 or 20 years old. Removing the old layers exposes the decking underneath so it can be inspected, repaired, or replaced before anything new goes on top. Yes, it costs more up front, But it's the difference between building on solid ground and building on a hidden weakness that nobody can see until it fails. The gap between a cheap roofing job and a professional one rarely shows up on the surface. Both can look identical from the driveway. The difference lives in decisions nobody sees. Decisions like whether nails go exactly where the manufacturer specifies, whether underlayment seams are properly sealed and overlapped, and whether old damaged material gets removed instead of buried under something new. There's another detail that made this particular disaster worse than it needed to be, and it involves something most homeowners completely overlook: ventilation. Roofs aren't just meant to keep water out. They're also designed to let heat and moisture escape from inside the attic. Without proper ventilation, hot, humid air becomes trapped under the roof deck, especially during summer. And that trapped moisture attacks the wood from underneath at the exact same time water might be sneaking in from above. In the Ohio home, the attic had almost no functional ventilation. The vents that existed were partially blocked by insulation that had been installed incorrectly, cutting off airflow that should have been constantly moving. This meant the roof deck was under attack from two directions at once: moisture pushing in from failed seams above, and trapped humid air weakening the wood from below. Most homeowners never think to check this, because ventilation problems don't show any obvious warning signs until the damage is already severe. A properly ventilated attic stays significantly cooler in summer and drier year-round, extending the life of shingles and protecting the wood structure underneath. It's one of the most overlooked factors in roof longevity, and it costs relatively little to get right during construction or a re-roofing project. Skipping it, or installing insulation carelessly, quietly shortens the lifespan of an otherwise well-built roof. By the time the full extent of the damage was uncovered, the family was looking at a repair bill that went far beyond a simple patch job. Sections of the roof deck needed complete replacement. The attic insulation, soaked and moldy in places, had to be torn out entirely. The kitchen ceiling required new drywall, fresh paint, and in one corner, repair to water-damaged cabinetry below. What could have been a routine roof replacement early on had become a five-figure structural repair, all traced back to nails placed a few inches out of position years earlier. This is the pattern that shows up again and again in roofing failures across the country. It's almost never one catastrophic mistake. It's usually a combination of small, avoidable decisions: rushed nailing, cheap underlayment, skipped tear-offs, poor ventilation, each one seemingly minor on its own, but devastating when they stack together silently for years. The good news is that every single one of these mistakes is completely preventable, and knowing what to look for puts homeowners in a powerful position. A qualified roofing inspection isn't just about checking for missing shingles from the ground. It involves examining the attic from the inside, checking for proper nailing patterns, verifying that underlayment was installed correctly, confirming that ventilation is functioning as designed, and asking direct questions about whether old roofing layers were removed before new ones were installed. For anyone buying a home, especially one with a roof that looks freshly done, it's worth asking the seller directly whether the roof was a full tear-off or installed over existing layers. It's worth requesting documentation from the roofing contractor who did the work, and it's worth having a qualified inspector physically enter the attic rather than relying only on a visual check from the ground or a quick walk across the shingles. For homeowners who already have a roof in place, the warning signs are often subtle, but findable if you know where to look. Faint discoloration on interior ceilings, even small ones that seem to disappear after drying, can indicate slow leaks working their way through hidden gaps. A musty smell in the attic that wasn't there before often points to trapped moisture building up behind the scenes. Shingles that appear slightly curled or lifted at the edges, even without any visible cracks, can be an early sign that the seal beneath them has already failed. What happened in that Ohio home wasn't the result of bad luck or an unusually severe storm. It was the predictable outcome of small mistakes made quietly, in places nobody thought to check, by people rushing through a job that deserved more care. And that's really the lesson hiding inside every roofing disaster like this one. The roofs that fail aren't usually destroyed in one dramatic moment. They're worn down slowly, decision by decision, until one ordinary storm finally reveals everything that had been building underneath the surface all along. The family eventually had their roof completely redone, this time with a full tear-off, properly placed nailing, high-quality underlayment, and corrected attic ventilation. Their new roof looks almost identical to the old one from the street, but underneath, it's an entirely different story, built the way it should have been the first time. That's the real takeaway here. A roof's true quality was never about how it looks the day it's finished. It's about the choices made in the layers nobody ever sees again once the shingles go down. And now that you know what those choices are, you'll never look at a rooftop the same way again. If this kind of hidden construction story fascinates you as much as it fascinates us, come back next week, because there's always another investigation waiting behind the walls, under the floors, and above the ceilings of homes that look perfectly normal from the outside.